Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the New York Rangers. As going into this year's NHL trade deadline, there's been some the big story for the Rangers have been Patrick Kane, right? The guy that everybody has had going to New York is Patrick Kane of the Chicago Blackhawks, but seemingly the tide has changed a little bit on that now. Maybe that's because of potentially the lack of interest from Patrick Kane and the sense that maybe he is going to stick it out the rest of the year in Chicago, or maybe the fact somebody else came on the radar. Nonetheless, the New York Rangers seem to have a new number one target heading to Broadway. Who could that guy be? We're going to take a look at that today. So we're going to start off with the San Jose Sharks forward Timo Meier. Timo Meier seems to be the front runner now for the New York Rangers in terms of their targets going into this year's trade deadline. Now, Timo Meier is, if you want an overall picture of what this guy is, he is a scoring power forward for the San Jose Sharks. And this season, he is a point-per-game player. He's got 26 goals, 20 assists, for 46 points in exactly 46 games with the Sharks this season. His ice time is up significantly, though, this season. He's got over 20 minutes of ice time with the Sharks on a regular basis and is a 2015 first-round pick, 9th overall by the San Jose Sharks. He's played in over 400 games in the National Hockey League and is due for a new contract this summer. And his current cap hit is $6 million, and that is expected to go up at least a few $1,000,000 per season. Now, this is from Frank Seravalli. He said, in a recent episode of Daily Faceoff Live, NHL insider Frank Seravalli reported that the New York Rangers have San Jose Sharks star forward Timo Meier on the top of their trade targets list. Very interesting. And again, the Rangers are a team that can do this for multiple reasons. One, they're looking pretty right now in the Metropolitan Division. They seem to be a team like Carolina, Washington, and the Rangers. Those three teams seem to be the teams to beat in the Metro and have to be pretty comfortable with where they're at, considering the Islanders and the Penguins' lack of success behind them recently. It sounds like those three teams are the teams to go with here for the playoffs right now. And Timo Meier would be a really great fit on the Rangers, not to mention the fact the Rangers have a lot of assets. You look at guys that, again, whether they should be traded or not is another conversation, but they have a lot of guys that are expendable commodities. You look at, draft pick-wise, they have their next two years of first and second round draft picks. They also have some really good prospects and players on the roster. So players on the roster, I don't think they should be trading Alexis Lafreniere, especially in a trade like this, but Lafreniere's name has been thrown out there. Capo Caco's name has been thrown out there, as well as a couple of other guys. Kravtsov, Hedel, again, not guys I think that should be traded, but guys that have been mentioned. And then even on the back end, they have a lot of really good talent there as well. Braden Schneider, Keandre Miller. Again, not guys that I think should get traded, but guys that could be available. And I think it gets to the point where you look at even some of their prospects like Robertson, that you could really look at least 6 or 7 guys that could be available in a trade along with the draft picks in a deal for Timo Meier or Patrick Kane or whatever. So where does he fit? Because that's kind of the thing here with Timo Meier. Because if you're bringing in Timo Meier, he has to fit somewhere in the lineup. And that's kind of where you run into problems here if you're the Rangers. Because, listen, the fact of the matter is, if you're going to trade a guy like Meier in and give up the assets you're going to, you have to, at the end of the day, ownership still has to sign off on this deal. And if you're not getting a guy that can play in the top 6, it defeats the whole point, right? Like, if you're going to give up the assets I'm about to say for a guy like Meier, he has to be playing power play, and he has to be playing in the top 6. And those are the two factors that I looked at here. And the reality is, he can realistically play on both of those spots. He can take Capo Caco or Lafreniere on the second power play. And he can also jump into the second line on this team. So we're going to get to that here. So the Rangers' current top six is Kreider, Zibanejad, and Kakko, Panarin, Trocheck, and Kravtsov. That's their current top six from the last game. And that is most recently updated from January 19th. So this is constantly changing and evolving. But again, the most recent lineup, that's what we saw. So right there, with this trade, Timo Meier can play on the top line with Kreider and Zibanejad. So Kreider, Zibanejad, and Timo Meier. That could be your first line for the Rangers, okay? And then he could jump on the second power play to play with Lafreniere and Hedel and Trouba and Miller. I think that's actually pretty good. Now, here's the other factor. What are the guys going in this deal? And you guys probably have a little bit of an idea from what I just mentioned there. If he's taking somebody's spot on the first line and taking someone's spot on the power play, who is that player? And that's Kaapo Kakko. Now, some people might like the idea, some people might hate the idea. But here is my mock trade for Timo Meier. So here is the deal. So the New York Rangers acquire Timo Meier for a 2023 first-round pick, Kaapo Kakko, and defenseman Ryan Lindgren. So here's the thing. You have to look at the money side of things. Because Kaapo Kakko's entry-level contract going the other way in the deal, the Rangers don't have enough money to make that deal work. And that's where you kind of come to the situation where you have to give up a player on the roster. Now, I don't like the idea of them giving up a Barclay Goodrow or a Philip Hedel or any of those other guys. I think at the end of the day, it ends up being a guy on the back end. And the Rangers have a defense where Lindgren, despite the fact he is a top pairing defenseman right now with Adam Fox, does actually become expendable. And I think some Rangers fans might hate the idea of trading Lindgren, and I absolutely agree with that. You have to look at the long-term picture here. So, look at this from the Sharks' perspective as well. So, that first-round pick is going to be a middle of the first-round draft pick. It's not going to be a top 10 pick, right? Unless the Rangers completely fall off the rails here in the next 2 months, the Rangers are going to be a playoff team. And that's going to be a mid-20s draft pick. Realistically, or even better than that, or even worse than that, if they go on a deep playoff run, maybe get to the conference finals or the Stanley Cup final. Who knows, right? So, in that sense, it's not going to be a great top draft pick, okay? Kaapo Kakko, I think his value is really diminished. His value is not where it needs to be. And in a Meier trade, I would say he's the equivalent of a second-round pick. So a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and Ryan Lindgren. Now, Ryan Lindgren, of course, is a good defenseman. And if the San Jose Sharks are kind of rebuilding things, Ryan Lindgren would be a great top-pairing defenseman on the San Jose Sharks. But he got 2 years left on his deal at $3 million per season. So that $3 million plus Kaapo Kakko, that's around $4 million in cap space freed up for the Rangers to take on the rest of Timo Meier's $6 million this season. And it also frees up the Rangers $3 million of cap space for this summer going into next year. Now, the San Jose Sharks get a little bit of stability in the sense that they're not going to take a rental at this year's deadline, right? They're not going to take a guy that his contract is coming this summer that they don't have some kind of protection over. So it doesn't make sense for them to go for a guy like, I brought up Sammy Blais, but his contract ends this summer, and again, he doesn't have the value of Ryan Lindgren. Ryan Lindgren has much more value, and if the Sharks decide they want to re-sign him this summer in Lindgren, they can decide to do that. They could re-sign him next summer before the trade deadline, or they could trade him before next year's trade deadline. There's a lot more flexibility with Ryan Lindgren and a lot more value in him than, say, a Sammy Blais or a Barclay Goodrow. Okay? So that's what you have to be willing to do. So the Rangers win in the sense because they free up cap space to re-sign Timo Meier this summer, that $3 million that they're giving in Ryan Lindgren. Okay, that goes somewhere else. That's allocated elsewhere. They're able to call up some of their younger defensemen. The Rangers have a plethora of good young defensemen. I know, it may be shocking to some of you, but the Rangers have a really good depth chart on the blue line. That's even playing in the Hartford Wolfpack right now, in the Rangers organization right now. And that's where you could call up some guys that are currently playing that can get some more ice time, are going to be on entry-level contracts that the Rangers can then sign a Timo Meier, sign a Alexis Lafreniere, and kind of commit to continuing the team with where it's at, but sacrificing a Lindgren, unfortunately. So here's how I'm looking at this, right? So the Rangers pick up Timo Meier. Again, mock trade, mock move, but this is what we're going with. Timo Meier, they sign and trade. So they sign him to an 8-year, $8 million contract per season. So that's 8-year, $64 million contract for Timo Meier. They trade this year's first-round pick, Kaapo Kakko, and Ryan Lindgren. So you may be saying to yourself, well, why would they trade Kaapo Kakko? His contract ends next summer. Again, it's similar to Lindgren. They have another year here, and Kaapo Kakko is an RFA next summer, which also allows them a little bit of flexibility. And he's also got arbitration rights. So they free up $2.1 million of Kakko's contract this year and next, and Lindgren. So they free up $5 million for the remainder of this season and an additional $5 million for next season. So again, the Rangers' allocation of money, it makes bringing Timo Meier in and actually signing him to that 8-year deal way more feasible, and they are still able to keep some of their guys around. So here's the other thing. Now that means you have to call up some of your younger guys. So this would change up the lineup a little bit. So now you've got Adam Fox and Keandre Miller as your new number one pairing, which you might like, you might not like. But again, that's kind of where they're at. Now, again, this is where the depth of your blue line comes into effect and is kind of how good is your blue line. Because I could say you put Braden Schneider and Jacob Trouba as your second pairing. Ideally, you'd want to separate them, but those are your third and fourth best defensemen. Now Lindgren's gone, so now you've got Libor Hayek, Ben Harper, and ideally you've got another defenseman in there. And who could that guy that you call up be? It could be Ty Emberson, Matt Robertson, or Zach Jones. Those are your three guys right now in Hartford that you could realistically call up to the NHL and have come up and be either scratch pad players or guys that come into the lineup. Now, I think with the way Ben Harper's been playing this season, yeah, I know. Yeah, he scored his first goal since 2016 the other day. He's not there to score goals. He's a good shutdown defenseman, actually. And I think his growth has actually allowed this trade to be possible. Because, let's be honest, we aren't all a fan of Libor Hayek. He's not going to come in and save the day as their third pairing defenseman, right? He's not going to save the West. And that's where you need to rely. You have to have enough confidence in a Ty Emberson or a Zach Jones and a Robertson. And maybe that allows you to bring in another depth defenseman in a trade, whether that becomes a Jake McCabe from Chicago. As funny as it sounds, maybe they make a deal with the Islanders for a Scott Mayfield, just as a third pairing defenseman to just solidify the blue line on a cheaper contract. I think that's very much feasible here for the Rangers. So that's my predictions for what I think the Rangers should do. I think they should go, Timo Meier, if that's the guy they go for, realistically, they don't have to give up the bank, and they're actually freeing up some cap space to keep a guy like Timo Meier. They have the depth in the pipeline where they're not even giving up a ton of prospects. They know what they have in Kakko. They know what they have in Lindgren, so they're not necessarily giving up the farm in that. They're giving up their first-round pick, which we expect them to do anyway, right? They gave up a first-round pick for Kopp last year, and that actually worked out pretty well. And I would say most Rangers fans would say, yeah, that was a worthy investment. Plus, there is the possibility that they can even keep Timo Meier longer term, which I think is very much I like that idea. And let's be honest, next year, there's no guarantee they would have been able to re-sign Kakko or Lindgren past next season anyway. So you're kind of getting a year ahead of the curve, trading them while they have some value before they become a rental next year, trading them to a team like San Jose who isn't a playoff team. There's a lot more flexibility in terms of, with that extra year of attainability, teams may be willing to trade for that and see what they have in those players, like the San Jose Sharks. And these are guys that they could use as building blocks as they rebuild in San Jose. I think it's a really interesting idea. And again, you have to rely on some of your younger guys, which is part of the equation here, because I don't know how many Rangers fans would be a fan of bringing up Jones or Emerson or Skinner or Robertson. And again, that's where you have those additional assets and draft picks. You have your next 2 years of second-round picks. Maybe use one of them. You also have Colorado's third-round pick this year. Maybe use one of those assets to bring in a depth defenseman here if you're really not comfortable with those guys, and you could make something like that work. So let me know what you guys think down below. I honestly like this proposal. I'm pretty confident in this, and I think this is something that actually makes sense for the Rangers, but let me know what you guys think. Let me know why I'm right. Let me know why I'm wrong. Let me know down below. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time. Peace.